Hey everyone, this is StarcraftDad, and welcome back to another game of StarCraft 2. This game is between Bojenkins playing Zerg in the red, and CuePhoenix playing Terran in the blue on the map Nerazim Crypt in the third season of the Blizzard Online Ladder. Today's players are playing on a new map that's new for Season 3, Nerazim Crypt, and each player comes with your basic starting setup with a bunch of minerals and gas, and a small base that's kind of this elongated shape with a very narrow choke point up here. You can see CuePhoenix coming over to build his starting supply depot. Right outside of this narrow ramp is a nice little natural expansion here that's pretty easily guarded by this smaller choke point with these rocks here and these hiding bushes. So players can set up a nice defense in this area for their two bases. And then continuing on to the right, there's a large ramp going down to a third expansion down here. Between each base, as we can see the Zerg player coming in, scouting with his drone here, and CuePhoenix starting his wall with his barracks, which is pretty standard against Zerg, and CuePhoenix trying to keep this drone busy here. From the front of each base, going to the left, you can see that they travel down to their other opponent. So there's a Xel'Naga tower here, and if you keep going, there's another Xel'Naga here. So this is a pretty mirrored map, and you can see the path that the Zerg drone took. Let's use some arrow keys to navigate here. So here's the Zerg's base with a similar setup, with the hiding brush, the third expansion on the right, and the rocks here making the choke a little bit smaller, and the Zerg's natural expansion. And then up into the Zerg base, where we can see the Zerg player Bojenkins is already building his spawning pool, which is a good defensive measure, and building gas, which can indicate that he's going for some kind of roach build at the beginning. Both players doing pretty standard starts to their two strategies. This drone being chased back by this SCV. He's almost dying, but he jumps inside the gas where he's harder to get to. So SCV getting a good look at what's going on here. So he can see the gas, CuePhoenix can see the spawning pool, and he should be thinking either a fast tech up to the Zergling's speed, which makes the Zerglings faster, or some kind of roach build. So this SCV traveling back home, you can tell he's going back through the brush there, and it looks like he's heading his way up to the Xel'Naga tower. So this will be a key part of this game. For sure, these Xel'Naga towers provide vision over a wide range of areas. So this Xel'Naga tower gives CuePhoenix, we pop on the CuePhoenix vision here, you can see that he has vision over this entire area, and most importantly this entire area leading up into the front of his base. So he'll be able to see any kind of incoming attack coming from Bojenkins before it hits the front door. CuePhoenix going for a double barracks front, which is pretty standard again. Maybe he'll be bringing these Marines over for some early pressure. And again in a standard opening, Bojenkins starting his natural expansion. Now you may think at 4 minutes into the game that Bojenkins is starting this pretty early, but this is pretty standard. The reason for this is that the Zerg units tend to be a little squishy. So the Zerg's strength is in building lots of units and sending those units in lots of waves against their opponent. But in order to do that, they have to have a lot more money, a lot more resources mined, so they tend to expand sooner. Terran in this case has a nice little wall in, trying to prevent Zerglings from coming into the base and attacking the units, since the Zerg can make a lot of units at the front if they intend to. But it looks like CuePhoenix is going to send this group of Marines out to kill these Zerglings and go in for some early pressure. So he's got about 9 Marines here making their way across the map. So we can see Zergling's metabolic boost being researched by the Zerg player, and that's done. A couple of Marines coming in from the Terran player, and a bunch of Zerglings being made immediately in defense. So here you can see an advantage of the Zerg player is that one of the advantages of building the second hatchery is he's going to have a lot of ability to make a lot of units very quickly. So these Marines are going to do some damage. They've already killed the Queen, which is pretty good, and they're making work on this hatchery here, and these Zerglings are going to come in and clean them up. Now they've got a somewhat of a reduced surface area by staying in here. This is another tactic that you'll see a lot in Terran versus Zerg games. So you can see the Zerg was able to kill off the Terran with a fair number of units, 14. That's 14 Zerglings compared to 9 Marines which is a pretty good return on investment for the Zerg player. But had the Marines retreated to some area where there's a little less surface area for the Zerg to spread out on for a surround, they would have done a lot better. But regardless, Bojenkins holding off that attack. We take a look at the income tab, and we can see that they're on par for income, but with this, actually CuePhoenix with a little extra on gas, but Bojenkins with an expansion here is going to be able to mine a whole lot more. And if we look in the unit production tab, he's only, that's interesting, he's only building one drone. He could be building a lot of drones at the same time. So as we've, okay, so some Zerglings going out just to check things out. Really, Bojenkins wants to have these Zerglings out so you can see when there's any kind of move out from CuePhoenix. You can see CuePhoenix has a bunch of Marines already. He's already up to 14. He's now up to a 3rd barracks, so he's up to 3 barracks and researching STEM, which is almost done, and building a factory. So CuePhoenix is teching up, building an orbital, upgrading to an orbital command, researching his armor upgrades. So these Marines are going to be pretty strong and pretty powerful, and they're coming out. There's about 15 of them. Bojenkins looks like he's built a couple of spine crawlers. Okay, he's built a lot of spine crawlers. I guess just 3 here, and a handful of roaches and some Zerglings. So these spine crawlers, I think they were used to be up here, and so he moved them down to his natural expansion. So you can see this choke point in action here. So these Marines are going to come in, and they're going to have a bunch of trouble against these roaches. Are really strong against Marines, but so are spine crawlers with their increased range. These roaches could come up and do quite a bit of damage here. So even STEM, these Marines didn't do very much damage at all. They couldn't even kill this one spine crawler. Over time, this spine crawler is going to heal itself with the Zerg healing ability. And you can see that between these 2 hatcheries, between this one and this one, which is now upgraded to a lair, Bojenkins will be able to produce a lot of units at the same time. With the queens, he can get 7 larvae out of this one and 7 out of this one. That's 14. That's equivalent to having 14 barracks or 14 command centers. And over here you can see CuePhoenix is beginning to build his 2nd command center, so he's going to be late here. If you look on the economy side, Bojenkins is just screaming ahead on the economy. Oh, well, they're close, but he is ahead. And if you would devote a little bit more into drone production, as you can, oh, there, look there. See, he's building 5 drones at once. So Bojenkins trying to push ahead in the macro game. Has a nice little defensive area back there. He's gone up to roaches, researching the roach speed ability to make them faster on creep. Should be building another queen, or at least having this queen produce some, increasing his creep spread here. So we should see that soon. So you can see a lot of larvae up here. So he's got it around to 7 there. So he should be pretty comfortable. We take a look at the army supply tab. See, he's very high on workers because he can, when he wow, he's very high on workers, almost double the worker supply. So you can see that when Zerg is established that the Terran is holing up inside their base, they can flip the switch and have their hatcheries produce a lot of drones, giving them lots of income. And then when they're ready to attack, they can take those hatcheries and flip them around and produce all army units. So that's the general flow of the Zerg game. He's researching an attack upgrade for melee units, which is kind of interesting. So that's going to help all of the Zerglings, but it's not going to help these roaches. So looks like he's kind of devoting himself to a roach army here, and I would expect a spire to be produced. He took the time to go up to layer technology, so I would expect a spire to be produced. But if you look in the CuePhoenix camp, he's got a pretty robust defense up here. After seeing those roaches at the base defense, he's building siege tanks. He's already got siege mode researched, so his tanks are going to be pretty strong. And he's already researched STEM, already researched combat shields, so his Marines are going to be pretty strong, and he's now researching a weapons upgrade. So CuePhoenix's units are pretty strong at this point. They've got upgraded, these tanks are out, so you've got 2 tanks already covering the front of the base, a bunch of Marines on the low ground, a bunker, and a bunch of Marines on the high ground. So this front door is pretty set. Even has a Marine over here to kind of keep an eye on this side. So Bojenkins is going to have to macro up in this in the face of this defense, and you can see he's doing just that, setting this drone down here to start a 3rd expansion. So Zerg in general tries to be 1 expansion up on the Terran. So this is just working plenty well for Bojenkins. You can see he's much higher on the supply count, 91 to 71. Looking at the worker supply, he's not quite at double. CuePhoenix starting to catch up here, but Bojenkins is starting to be lower on the army supply. But if we look over here, back in the main base, you can see up in the supply tab, he's building a macro hatchery. So as mentioned before, Zerg can only make units out of hatcheries. So now he's going to have 4 between all of his 4 bases. So that's a great ability for him to make lots of units all at once. And you can see that he's storing up lots of money here and building the spire. So he should be able to make a whole ton of Mutalisks all at once, which is going to give him a lot of ability to harass the Terran player. CuePhoenix, already sensing this, has 4 missile turrets back at his base near the mineral line. This should give him a pretty good defense from Mutalisk harass coming from this direction. And a missile turret up there. Should be trying to... You can see these buildings are pretty exposed. There's not a lot of air power here to defend. And building a couple of missile turrets in the back to defend this mineral line. But, 3, which is okay. But the real advantage of the Mutalisks, which are... little flock right here, 5, is that they can pretty much go anywhere in the map from any direction that they want to. And so the Zerg player can kind of poke around with the Mutalisks and cause a lot of harassment, distract the Terran player from their plan. So he's going to put that tank in siege mode. So now we've got a pretty good set. We've got 4 tanks here covering this front door. So this is going to be a pretty strong front door. And this next hatchery is just started. Bojenkins really should go ahead and transfer a bunch of drones from this main mineral line over to this third one. Stacking a lot of drones on the same mineral patch is not as effective as having them spread out. So now we're up to 8 Mutalisks, which is pretty good. He's going to come in and see what's going on in the Terran base. He really needs to ball them up together. In small groups of like 3, the Mutalisks aren't too powerful, but in a large group, 8 is okay. But if he comes in here, he's going to run into a lot of trouble from these missile turrets. Let's look at their health and see what he decides to do here. So Terran has a pretty good ability to turtle up and build a lot of defenses to defend their bases. Zerg doesn't have that ability as much. Oh, okay, so back off, back off. Oh, that's the... Yeah, that was a bad move there. Because as you ran up the side, he just got hit by more and more missile turrets. But he maintained 6 at full health, which is not too bad, so he only lost 2, and that's pretty good. Should be able to come over and pick up this SCV. Looks like he's not going to do that. CuePhoenix going for a 3rd expansion. In the game of StarCraft 2, if you're not going to attack, you need to expand. You need to increase your defense ability and your ability to make units. And also by expanding, you're also making your base larger, so it'll be harder to take you out of the game completely. But more importantly, it gives you money, because as you can tell, both of these players are macroing up, building a lot of units. I mean, these whole score of Marines here are just to protect this SCV, this new expansion, and looks like that was a good idea, because here come these Mutalisks. They should try to take out the SCV if they can, or just get out of there instead, because they're just going to die. See, way too many Marines for those Mutalisks. And that's just a, that's a sad loss for Bojenkins. He's now lost 8 Mutalisks for really no gain. Except that he's now seen that Terran has expanded. So if you look at the map here from Bojenkins' view, he can guess that this expansion has been taken. So now he's up to 3. So he needs to expand to a 4th expansion just to stay ahead on that. Resource count. CuePhoenix now adding Thors to this mix and medevacs to this front door. This is going to be pretty hard to break into. But one of the things that we can see is that as the game goes on and the players expand their bases, CuePhoenix now has this 3rd that he has to defend. There's just more area to defend. So Bojenkins has this massive roach army that will do okay, but probably not very good against this front door. But if he took it around to this 3rd expansion that has no defense at all, he could do a lot of damage, and CuePhoenix would be stuck back on his 2 base. With his 1st base, if you look back here, almost out of minerals. So here comes in the attack, and you can see that CuePhoenix saw all of this due to that Xel'Naga tower. And taking a look at the hit point tab, we're just going to watch and see how these roaches do. So one of the problems with ranged units is that they're going to stop moving the frontline units when they can attack. So these ones in the back aren't doing any good. He really needs to push in and then attack. And these tanks and these Thors put together are just going to do a terrible amount of damage. And you can see these roaches trying to make their way around to hit this Thor. But while they're doing that, that's just delaying their ability to attack. This Thor almost did 9 hit points left, but besides that, a lot of these frontline units did get killed, so that's pretty good, but, well, maybe not. A lot of frontline units, I think, are in these medevacs getting ready for a drop. 2 Thors, 16 Marines, going to make a counter drop into the Zerg base, and you can see how quickly the Zerg was able to resupply. I mean, look at how many roaches just got made in a matter of just a handful of seconds here. And this drop, as you can watch and see these lines, made to go in across with the Zerg, doesn't have vision and come down here. And CuePhoenix even has a little Hellion here to watch this expansion here. So I don't think CuePhoenix can see that third. Yeah, see, he can't see the third expansion down here, so he thinks Zerg's just on 2 base. And the Zerg player can see this group coming in, but he hasn't moved his forces yet. They're going to be able to take out both of these queens pretty easy and take out this macro hatchery. Interestingly, some of them are focusing down on this evolution chamber. That looks like a big mistake. They need to go ahead and lift off here before they get 2 killed by these roaches. Roaches can't attack air units, and so ironically enough, these units are safe here until these mutalisks get finished building. Mutalisks should come up here and try to take out these medevacs before they get away. And here we go, a couple of mutalisks from the secondary expansion, and a couple of Zerglings waiting to see when things drop. Roaches coming out after them, and this queen chasing away this medevac. Is he going to be able to take out the one with the... Nah, not quite. Almost. I think he personally should have kept up with that and sent those mutalisks in to kill that. So at this point, you know, the game is starting to spread out. The Zerg is starting to mine out their resources. You can see that the resources here are getting mined out, and there's no resources back at the main base. So Zerg really needs to expand to yet another location, and should probably be trying to put some harass over here. There's a planetary fortress here, but there's not a lot of defenses here. This whole group of roaches and mutalisks could probably take that out, and doing that would force the Terran player to uplift to unsiege their tanks and move them, which is perfect, which is what Zerg wants. The disadvantage of the Terran army is that it's pretty static. It has to stay in one place. These siege tanks are placed in one place, so all of their defenses are right here. The advantage of the Zerg army is that it's very mobile, and he could attack from multiple directions, or he could attack from a direction, like he could bring a bunch of mutalisks into here, even with these missile turrets. A whole bunch of mutalisks can take out a single missile turret pretty quickly, and force the Terran player back into their main base, or back out to their expansion base, and then while they're doing that, the rest of the Zerg army could come back in to attack into the natural. So the Zerg has a lot of mutalisks here. He can probably beef up that count quite a bit more. You can see he's even got a lot of gas, so he can add some more mutalisks or add some more roaches, but this roach army is not going to do very well against this front door, so he really needs to stay away from this front door. We've got 3 Thors now, 2 Vikings, which aren't going to do that much damage, but you know, he really needs to keep, you know, if he keeps continuing to mass up this army, and if you look, he's up at the 200 count, he's not going to be able to do much damage against the front doors, so he needs to attack up here to this expansion. I mean, even with his medevacs, that's still hardly anything at all. The roaches could come in here, take that out, and remove CuePhoenix's ability to gain minerals. But instead, he's going into the front door, triple Thor and a bunch of Marines against a bunch of mutalisks. That's just going to evaporate those, and these roaches are going to have the same problem that they had last time with all of these tanks, and now with the 3 Thors, looks like they were able to take out one of those previous ones, but now up to 3 Thors. I mean, they just destroyed these roaches right here at this tree line here. Another thing that you know, is interesting about this tree line is that units behind the tree line can't see through it, so they are at a disadvantage as far as being able to pick targets, and looks like CuePhoenix is just going to counterattack. This game's been lasting long enough. It's time to go to bed. Let's just take these guys out, bringing these units in over the creep. So many creep tumors here. They're just going to be taken out with one single scan. Look at that. And Bojenkins, if you look back at his base, he's making 6 mutalisks at a time. He's already got a reactionary army of roaches right here. They're going to do pretty well. A massive clump of spine crawlers keeping these mutalisks back here. Oh no, he's sending them in early. That's going to be a real big problem. Too many Marines, too many. That's just a real mistake to send those in. Don't send in the roaches. You need to stay back. Oh, but I mean, this could be pretty close. I mean, these Marines are just going to get eaten up by the roaches, but these 3 Thors are just doing a terrible amount of damage against these roaches. You know, looking them down, and then reinforcements coming in from the back, Marines coming, medevacs coming, and they were able to take out one of the Thors, which is great. This Thor up to 14 kills now. This one up to 10, rank of Sergeant. Armed with a bunch of Marines, a ton of medevacs are going to come in and try to take out these spine crawlers, taking a look at the health of these spine crawlers. And these Vikings could land, I suppose, but I mean, at this point they're just providing vision, which is not doing much. But you know, with these 3 Thors, these 2 Thors here, backed up by all these Marines, you can see the attack commands strung together. A bunch of roaches being produced. He needs Oh, they're just gonna get destroyed here, and these Thors, 18, 14 kills, just doing a ton of damage. A Thor coming in for the back, and more siege tanks. This is just gonna be this. I think this is the end of Bojenkins. Even though he's got an expansion here that CuePhoenix knows nothing about, and even though he can reproduce roaches at an amazing rate, you know, off of 2 hatcheries, he's just making 12 roaches at a time. I just don't think that he's going to be able to hold off this attack. And these Thors just doing a ton of damage. This one a recruit with only 1 kill, this one a commander with 22. And these drones are just coming in to get just destroyed. You can hear their gurgles. And GG from Bojenkins. What a game there. GG from CuePhoenix. And going in for the kill. But that is the end of the game. Bojenkins has left the game. And we can see here how, you know, Zerg had a pretty good lead going on the 3 base, trying to keep up on his opponent as far as bases are concerned. And, you know, CuePhoenix, by going up to 3 base, he really forced Bojenkins to continue to expand, to go to a 3rd base. And really, this is where I think Bojenkins, with that maxed out army, could have had swung in his advantage of mobility. You know, back when Terran's on their 1 base with a lot of defenses, here with the missile turrets and the tanks up here at the front, you know, Terran's pretty turtled in. They can stay on 1-2 base for quite a long time. And at that point, I think the Zerg is really kind of in a tough pickle because they can't come in the front door. It is difficult to come in the side door, especially with all the missile turrets. But as soon as Terran starts to move out into this longer game, where they're going to a 3rd and then later a 4th, not sure where he would expand to a 4th, but the point is that they're starting to expand and they're going to have to move their army around. And that's where I think the matchup starts to even out a little bit, is when they start to expand and move out. But Bojenkins just continually trying to come into this front door, which is very difficult to come into attack, especially with the bushes, with the high ground, and a lot of room to place tanks and ranged defenses. And CuePhoenix just continuing to eat away at that. And since Bojenkins didn't expand to a 4th, you know, I mean, we can look up here. He had a lot of money, a lot of resources off of all those hatcheries. He can make a lot of units very quickly. I mean, even had he back here at this defense where he had all of those spine crawlers and all those roaches and mutalisks, if he would have held them back here and then waited for the Terran army to come through the bushes up here, he could have done a lot more damage, maybe even held off that attack, and would have been CuePhoenix may have decided to give up in the interest of time. But let's take a quick look at the score screen, and we can see how these players did compared to each other. So if you look here, you know, Bojenkins with higher AP on the CuePhoenix, quite a bit higher. Could be why his rank is silver 14 compared to CuePhoenix's 33. And mining more resources, but as you can see, I mean, it was more, but not a vast amount more. And I think Zerg really needs to be getting a lot of resources, because a lot of their units are going to be dying because they're pretty squishy. You can see that the worker count is really high for Bojenkins, which is really good. But his killed units is, you know, pretty low compared to CuePhoenix's, and I think most of that is due to that continual pushing on the front door, which is pretty ineffective against that siege line and all of those defensive units. But there you go, Terran versus Zerg in the Silver League, and a lot of lessons learned about Zerg and what they can do against the Terran player, and some interesting things about the Terran player as well, highlighting their immobility, but the strength of their defensive posture as a turtling race. So that'll be it for today's cast. Thanks again. This is StarcraftDad signing off.